My original take on Kathy Shanks was I'm not going to badmouth her. I respect my elders. And a lot of y'all in the comments section have said you may want to reconsider that position. And to be fair, initially I wasn't, until I read this most recent report out of the Daily Mail. So let's listen to this interview entirely and then go into that article, because it's absolutely mind-blowing.
Obviously, in the trial, I heard your testimony and the passion and the time, and I hear everybody else talking about the time, and even you being so humble, like this is a team effort, you know?
Absolutely.
What was it like for you to be a part of this? I mean, obviously, you talked about it in trial, about how you came back and you wanted to volunteer. Why was that so important?
I had worked with law enforcement my entire adult career for 40 years through Department of Child Services, through Child Protection. And I knew several of the law enforcement officers, the prosecutors.
So she does have a history of public service. Now that doesn't necessarily make her a saint, but she does come across as a sweet old lady. Or some type of sweet old lady down the street. At least that's the initial vibe I'm getting. But as of right now, she's doing this all from the kindness of her heart. So either she has a heart of gold, or she's selling a load of crap.
The time Rob arrives, and when I learned of this, I contacted Rob and said I'd like to help.
And that is exactly what you did. I mean, so much. Your role, obviously, we know from your testimony, helping file and organize and do all the things that need to be done in order for an investigation to kind of stay organized, if you will, the organizational side of things. When you were moving offices and you opened up that drawer and you came across this box, what went through your mind? And where, obviously, we know where it ended. But what went through your mind?
When I found that, I realized that I had not heard of this person. And I went to the file drawer and found the actual file for Richard Allen Whiteman at that time, as it had been written. And I read the report that Dan Doolin had made.
Now, has anybody noticed every time she talks about this story, she does have her eyes closed, or she isn't making actual direct eye contact with the person she's talking to? I'm not a body language expert. I'm not implying anything. Everything said here is alleged. But that is some strange behavior, or at least something I'm noticing. Now, does that mean anything? I'm not saying it is, but it is noticeable.
After he had spoken with him, and I, as being an investigator, I had looked at some of the statements from the girls that said they had seen a person out at the bridge. And basically, I put the two and two together, took it to Tony.
So her big connection here between what she found in the shoebox to Richard Allen Whiteman in the filing cabinet is somebody somewhere said they saw somebody on the bridge. How is that a connection? There were a lot of people on that trail that day. There were a lot of people on the bridge that day. It's my understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, all the trails within that area are heavily used. And nobody that took the stand during that trial pointed to Richard Allen as being the individual they saw on the bridge or the individual they saw on the trail. And Delphi is a very small community. Everybody knows everybody. It's a valid point when somebody says, how did they not recognize Richard Allen? He worked at the pharmacy. And if you're from a small town, I'm pretty sure you could tell me who works at the pharmacy within your town, even if you have multiple pharmacies. I would almost bet that you could tell me the individuals, or at least recognize the individuals that work in those pharmacies, whether you go there or not. But nobody identified him. But because she's saying one of the witnesses said they saw the person on the bridge, well, that has to be Richard Allen in her mind. I mean, make it make sense, because it doesn't necessarily make sense to me.
And we went from there.
Outside of this, you're a member of this community for so long.
Absolutely, my entire life, yes.
What does it mean to you to be able to see all of this come to where we are today? One, misfiled report, if you will, leads to all these years of work being able to pile together. We talk a lot about all the evidence just was able to stack up. And then the final pieces of this is... What is it like for you to see not only the guilty verdict on that day last month, but today to hear the sentence of 130 years?
The justice has been served. I mean, there was an amazing team that worked on this. I mean, Jerry and all of the state police and all the other agencies, and I have such high regard. And I guess what I can best say is I got back a lot more than I ever gave.
Obviously, you hear all these people talking about you. Every person
So her point of view is clearly that justice has been served, and this is a great team of individuals. They did a rock-solid investigation. Even though none of the witnesses could identify Richard Allen. Even though the ballistics expert couldn't for sure 100% say that round came out of Richard Allen's weapon. And the reason she can't 100% say it did is because she can't exclude other weapons tested. And they found no DNA of Richard Allen at the crime scene and no DNA of any of the victims in Richard Allen's home. But yeah, rock solid investigation. Absolutely.
Calling you, thanking you.
It's very humbling. Very humbling. I did it because I like to serve. I like to help people, and that's what I did.
So she likes to serve. This is why she did that. And this would be a great time to dive into this absolutely mind-blowing article out of the Daily Mail. Shocking Delphi passing cases. Volunteer who led cops to the suspect Richard Allen turns down the whopping reward. The volunteer whose quick thinking and keen eye cracked the Delphi passing cases turned down the $325,000 reward for leading law enforcement to the man convicted of the crimes. DailyMail.com has exclusively learned that volunteer Kathy Shanks has told the families of Liberty German and Abbywilliams that the funds should instead be funneled into the memorial softball field and foundation established in memory of the girls who were passed by Richard Allen in February 2017. The revelation was made by Shanks' daughter Jamie, who took to X last week to share her mother's decision. Jamie, 47, a North Carolina-based author who uses the pen name Dahlia West, wrote, "My mom has told the families that they should funnel the reward money to the softball field that was built in the girl's name and the scholarships they've set up, as she will not touch a dime of it. As a law enforcement officer, it is unethical," added Jamie, who describes her books as cheap, fast, dirty fiction. Allen, a 52-year-old local man and married father of one, who nobody happened to see at the bridge that day, was convicted on 2 counts of passing and 2 felony passing charges in November. On December 20, he returned to Carroll County District Court in Indiana, where Judge Francis Gull sentenced him to a total of 130 years in prison. Indiana State Police and the Carroll County Sheriff's Office and the FBI were all involved in the sprawling investigation into the brutal passing of the girls, whose bodies were found on February 14, 2017, concealed in the woods near the Monon High Bridge Trail from which they disappeared the previous day. Shaky cell phone footage recorded by Libby in the moments before the girls were taken showed a man who became known as Bridge Guy walk behind Abby as she made her way across the rickety high bridge. This recording became the focal point of the public appeal for information. The appeal generated thousands of leads, but had it not been for Shanks, the case might never have been solved. It was Shanks, 75, a volunteer tasked with organizing and filing those tips, who stumbled upon a box of paperwork which included a lead sheet relating to a Rick Allen Whitehead, which should be Whiteman. Allen had been contacted by the police 3 days after the girls were passed and self-reported being on the trail that day between 1 and 3 p.m. Allen said he had walked past 3 girls. Shanks recalled a girl telling officers that she had encountered a man on a trail that day and had wondered if that might have been a correlation. When she checked her files, she found that Allen had been briefly interviewed and then misfiled under the name Whiteman and marked cleared, meaning there was no follow-up interview. She flagged this to Carroll County Sheriff Tony Leggett, who took it to lead investigator Indiana State Police Lieutenant Jerry Holman. Right away, these men knew they had found their bridge guy. By then, the reward fund for information leading to the suspect's arrest and conviction stood at a staggering $325,000. The already generous coffers had been boosted by an anonymous donor who stumped up $100,000 in 2021. So this woman just did all this out of the kindness of her heart and turned down over $250,000. She said, put it in a softball field or give it to a scholarship fund. I don't need it. I don't want it. I'm just here to help. Who turns down over $250,000? I mean, maybe she is a saint, but this seems like a huge red flag. Who turns down that kind of money? I understand she might have had good intentions, but that's life-changing money. And to me personally, this just doesn't add up.
And right place, right time, right?
I guess I basically call it divine intervention.
Yeah,
Divine
you were just there,
intervention,
open that drawer, you just so happened to be the person. Finally, last thing. obviously it went so long, so many people, I mean, 8 years almost, that you're, this community, like, please, we have all these things. We have video evidence of this suspect, and we still don't have the person. What was that like for you to be able to see law enforcement and investigators kind of finish putting that puzzle together after waiting for so long?
It was amazing. And I think I told Jerry it was a well-oiled machine.
Is it a well-oiled machine, or did somebody just grease the wheels? You let me know down in the comments below.
I couldn't believe I had worked up to the arrest in my former profession, but I had never seen this, and it was amazing what they did. And they just went into action.
Just magically. All
and did what needed to be done, and here we are today.
So there you have it. Kathy did all this out of the kindness of her heart. She's giving all that money to the scholarship fund in the softball field. It was just divine intervention that she happened to be there that day and see that one particular piece of information in the shoebox as they were moving locations. I mean, she has all this memorized. Is it a red flag to turn down that kind of money, especially in this economy? Is she the one legitimate person within that area who did all this out of the kindness of her heart? Or is it possible there's a scenario where she kind of feels guilty about what's going on and she doesn't want to accept that money? I mean, all this is certainly interesting to me, and if it's interesting for you, let me know down in the comments below. And if you enjoy this and more fair coverage, maybe check one of these videos out. Y'all be safe now.